Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Media here, and it's happening, you guys. They are banning people from not just going outside, but going outside on their own property with new lockdowns in Canada over the climate. You heard that right, climate lockdowns in Nova Scotia, Canada, as tourist operators pivoting amid drought-driven ban on forest activities. Now they make it seem like, oh, this is about stopping people from starting fires. However, the restrictions include going on your own property, fishing, camping, hiking, things that have nothing to do with fires at all. Basically, telling all Canadians that, look, we don't think you're smart enough to not start fires, so we're just going to ban you from going outside to any kind of place in the middle of the summer. As we see what appears to be modified conditions in places like Nova Scotia, which only has 3 fires right now, which seems like a lot, but if you consider Manitoba and other places, the fires in most other provinces, which are, by the way, huge to Americans watching, are huge. There's much more of them. There's many more of them. And by the way, this also means not driving in the woods. Driving. This is the World Economic Forum's agenda that we've been warning about for so long. I mean, here's a post of mine from July 6, 2021. The next attack on us will be a climate lockdown or grid failure. The preparations are obvious. We did videos back October 2021. Here's a video I did called The Coming Climate Lockdowns and the Great Reset Highway Restrictions from 3 years ago, which would have been, let's see, June 20th of 2022. Again, we've been talking about this for a very long time, but alas, people said, oh, we're fear mongering. Well, we always knew this is where they're going. This is what they're going to do with the 15-minute city agenda, which we had witnessed firsthand in Oxford, UK, back in 2022 for nearly a month as we surveyed the implementation of these 15-minute cities. We're going to go into this and more today. What is exactly happening in Canada? Why this affects you? The incoming QR code, social credit systems, carbon credits, etc. Before we do, I urge people to check those links below, including heavensharvest.com, and get prepared today so you aren't dependent on their system later. Heavensharvest.com for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO. There's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, and books on how to get started. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you'll get 5% off as well as free shipping on these items. I highly recommend people get on this today for yourself, for your family. So when they force you into a ration system and they tell you you can't go outside and they tell you you can't go to the grocery store, you are indeed prepared. Also check out whambeef.com for 10 plus year shelf life freeze-dried steak, 12 servings per bag. And this also includes freeze-dried chicken and ground beef. Use code WAMBEEF, W-A-M-B-E-E-F, all one word, and you will get 20% off on your order. So I highly recommend people get on this today. Guaranteed no mRNA jabs, no lab-grown meat, all American beef that's 100% natural. Stock up, whambeef.com, code WAMBEEF. I apologize to anyone if I sound weird. I do have some kind of sinus and throat thing. Doing my best to push along because the news doesn't stop, my friends, and this one's a big one. So, as CBC News, which is state-run garbage media in Canada, writes, Nova Scotia tourists operators pivoting amid drought-driven ban on forest activities. Ban will be in place until October 15th or until conditions improve. So basically, ruining everyone's summer, claiming that you don't know enough to be able to go outside without causing a fire, including while fishing, telling people they can't drive through the woods. This means that people in many places can't get to their home because they're closing roads and they're fining people huge amounts of money. As Nova Scotia's trails were suddenly shut down late Tuesday afternoon, the move left some residents and visitors scrambling to find alternatives, it says. On Tuesday, the province announced it was banning hiking, camping, fishing, and the use of vehicles such as ATVs in the woods due to an elevated wildfire risk. Nova Scotia has seen limited rain recently, and no significant rainfall is in the forecast for the coming days. And by the way, they totally blindsided people with this. And it's insane because they are immediately shutting down these cities. And of course, we have companies that depend on summer travel, tourism, and hiking. Like Lee Fraser is a CEO of Live Life Intense. It's an adventure company on the Cabot Trail in Marjorie Forks, Nova Scotia. Said he was blindsided, and he has to basically tell people that come all the way out there, sorry, the forest is canceled, essentially. And of course, this is an insane provision. And of course, it's going to affect people based on just traveling across the country, going to go camping. You get there and they tell you, hey, you fishing, you might cause a fire. And they are using a lot of the COVID metrics for this, as well as Canadians lose their cool as Nova Scotia sets worst hiking ban yet. This is really crazy because they are now creating a hotline. Nova Scotia sets up hotline for people to snitch on neighbors caught violating ban on hiking, camping, fishing. The measures apply to both Crown and private land. That's an important point because the slave talk in Canada, Crown land means public land. And then on top of that, private land, because you don't really own anything. You will own nothing and you will be happy, as they say at the World Economic Forum, when you're in Canada. And people are pissed, but what will they do about it? Remember what they did with the COVID stuff. And I warned at the time that was a litmus test to bring in the technocracy and 15-minute city agenda, the Great Reset, climate lockdowns, which, of course, is what the World Economic Forum themselves said in 2022 in a paper called My Carbon. The World Economic Forum admitted in 2022 that the COVID was a test for compliance or obedience. It was a test of our obedience to bring in climate lockdowns, 15-minute cities. So, and this isn't some hoax. This is on the My Carbon page on the World Economic Forum's own website. And it's all about forcing us into 15-minute cities and climate lockdowns. So, again, these provisions are insane. This is currently illegal in Nova Scotia. Canada, says Shiver King on X, says climate lockdowns have officially hit. I will never comply. And it shows a child running with a dog in the woods. This, again, could be on your own property. There's talk about helicopter surveillance, snitching by neighbors. This person on X by the name of Crazy World wrote, "These are climate lockdowns. Make no mistake about it. You are not allowed to go outside and enjoy nature because it's sunny. Just think about it. Nova Scotia bans hiking and use of vehicles in woods as dry conditions raise wildfire fears." So let's once again just go over exactly what the details are, effective as of 4 p.m. on Tuesday, August 5th. And they made this announcement on the day of. On the day of. It's going to restrict hiking, camping, fishing, and the use of vehicles in the woods are not permitted. Trail systems through woods are off limits. Camping is allowed only in campgrounds, so government campgrounds. And these and other measures are in place on provincial, crown, and private land until October 15th, or until conditions allow them to be lifted. The fine for violating the restrictions is $25,000. This is pure criminality on their part. And the guy who pushed it through is a conservative. I've always said, by the way, first of all, Canada, what they call conservatives are far leftists, like are slightly less far left than the Liberals and the NDP, Socialists and Green Party in Canada. But nonetheless, they're still socialists. And there's no such thing as conservatism really in Canada these days. But I've always said that the people that come to you under the guise of conservatism will bring in the same restrictions in another way as those on the left. And Viva Frey on X says, just a reminder that the guy who just banned hiking, camping, and fishing in Nova Scotia forests used to live in Bermuda, lives next door to billionaires, and was identified in the Paradise Papers, which detailed prominent politicians holding offshore accounts for the purpose of tax evasion. He's likely compromised, likely blackmailed, I would say, though Tim Houston was never linked to any malfeasance. It says, hey, Tim, did your billionaire Sobe neighbors ever thank you for the sole-sourced government contract you granted them? Yeah. This is a guy who calls himself a conservative who's pushing the climate agenda, just like people on the right are pushing biometrics and pushing this kind of stuff through migration, which was caused by the intelligence agencies in the first place, mass migration. And then they come in with biometrics. It's a Trojan horse, or they're banning pornography on the internet unless you have an ID, which again sounds good because you don't want children watching that, but that's on the parents to parent their children, not for them to bring in another Trojan horse where you have to be surveilled every time you go on the internet, because that's going to bring in the same thing for social media eventually, which is, by the way, just a surveillance network to assess who you are for the future social credit system. Maxime Bernier says, I tweeted about the coming climate lockdowns during COVID. 3.5 years later, we're there. Nova Scotia's fake conservative premier, Tim Houston, started the trend with his tyrannical ban on going out in nature. You see Maxime Bernier's post, the COVID lockdowns and vaccine passports are just a rehearsal for the climate lockdowns and the carbon passports. Now, of course, I've been saying this since 2020. Here's a post of mine from 2021 from Facebook. The next attack on us will be a climate lockdown or a grid failure. The preparations are obvious. If you watch my videos going back to 2020, I talked about this. I also talked about the idea of utilizing these policies back before 2020, back in the 2010s, when I talked about the climate issue. But of course, after the beginning of 2020, it was clear that this was the move they were making. And I have this video, which mentioned this Wall Street Journal article back from October 2nd, 2021. I made this video. And it says in this article, want to lock down for the climate, hitting environmentalist emission timetables would take far more than even what the pandemic forced. Now, this also includes, by the way, the idea of forcing people into banning meat across the board, forcing people to have restricted bank accounts. I have this video, by the way, Bill Gates carbon credits, the coming climate lockdown and the Great Reset highway restrictions, which I posted June 20th, 2022. It's over on Rumble. And of course, the My Carbon page, which I just mentioned, by the World Economic Forum, as they destroy all independence. This is all about getting rid of independence. Australians ordered to surrender machetes or go to prison in the state of Victoria. We are seeing a full-scale assault on individualism across the board. Anyone that dares show themselves to be, well, human, because the basis of humanity is individualism and freedom, is set to be under attack. And of course, with these restrictions comes something that we already have in place across the board. Now, we have the Emergency Planning Act, sections 18 and 18.1 in Canada and Saskatchewan, which allows the government to take your house, take your property, force you into lockdown, force you into a cage, kill you if they want, destroy anything in their way, kill your animals, take your livestock, and force you into food rations. They also have the United Nations Pact for the Future, which 193 countries signed on to, including Canada, which it was signed in September of 2021, or 2024, rather. And that allows them to shut down your bank account if you say anything against them, if you push back against them in any way, against the politicians, against the narrative, allows them to force you onto food rations, and allows them to bring in social credits and or carbon credit scores. Now, your bank is already rolling out carbon credit scores. It's not mandatory yet, but it will be. The Canadian government has been pushing this hard with their push for a CBDC as well, and their digital ID system. We have QR codes to get into towns in Quebec, and we have a full-scale ID system linked to social credit that they're rolling out across the board, while trying to ban people from saying things on social media. And they're banning news stories in Canada on most social media platforms. They already have for years on Facebook. This is how they restrict the body and mind of the individual and make that individual part of a vast collective of slaves controlled by the shadow state via convenience, because tyranny comes under the guise of convenience, utilizing technology, utilizing the conveniences of technology, and eventually ration-based systems to force everyone to their knees, make them totally dependent. Control your money through the bank, control your money digitally through the bank, control you via things you said on social media or things you spent on your credit card in the past in your social and carbon credit score, and then force on you poisonous foods through the ration system. The grid, of course, would be completely controlled, and your access to the internet will be controlled as well in your 15-minute city, where you won't have any property and you won't be able to go outside. You won't be able to go outside on your own property unless mandated to do so, unless they say you can. It's a Logan's Run type scenario. And this is exactly how it starts. And we can already see it get worse than this in other places around the world. In Kenya, the Ojiek people, a tribe, have been placed under arrest and banned from eating and are pushed into starvation for having low carbon credit scores. In Sierra Leone, they've already implemented Bill Gates's social credit score attached to digital IDs, where if you don't have a digital ID, you can't get food, you can't be a citizen, you can't have a job, you can't have a bank account, you can't drive. And then, of course, they're bringing in restrictions in Mexico right now, where I live, which is super anti-technocracy, but the restrictions are coming in anyway. I've been warning about this for years. They're making biometrics mandatory if you want to be have a driver's license or be a resident or citizen here. So, and including having bank accounts, etc. So again, the move is to force the entire world into bondage, utilizing the lack of independence, the forceful dependence, weakening of the public, demoralization of the public, and telling them that you can't go outside and fish because you might start a fire while you're standing in the water fly fishing. That's the reality we're dealing with right now. That's what I've been warning about for so long. That's why we as individuals need to stand up and show that we are capable of taking care of ourselves and stop proving the government right by depending on them for absolutely everything. Sitting on our hands, waiting for politicians to change problems that other politicians or even the same politician caused in the first place. This is a call to action for every individual in Canada to stand up before it's too late, before they start closing the provincial borders again, like they did under COVID, which we saw people like our friends, like Dan Dix at Press for Truth, getting stopped by police just trying to cross a provincial border. Maxime Bernier getting arrested for daring to go to one of his own political rallies while he was running for prime minister. Really tells you who runs the show, doesn't it? And of course, they want poison meats. They want to spray our foods. They want to force us into eating only what they tell us to eat. And look at what they call health versus what we know ourselves is considered health. We're dealing with opposites, Orwellian doublethink, if you will. So they are coming in with this. The way we survive is not being dependent on their system. They depend on our dependence, my friends. And if they depend on our dependence, then our responsibility is to reject and stock up. So I'm going to close this off once again by telling people to go and check those links below, heavensharvest.com, for long-term storable foods that are non-GMO. There's organic kits, heirloom seeds, water filtration and storage, books on how to get started, freeze-dried food. Use code WAM, W-A-M, and you'll get 5% off as well as free shipping on this. I don't know what people are waiting for at this point. I make nothing off of this. This is about you guys getting prepared so you don't end up dependent on them later. Yourself, your family, you have a responsibility over yourself and your family, my friends. Also, check out whambeef.com for 10 plus year shelf life freeze-dried steak, 12 servings per bag. There's also freeze-dried chicken and ground beef. Use code WAMBEEF, W-A-M-B-E-E-F, all one word, and you will get 20% off on your order. So I highly recommend people go and check that out. Guaranteed no mRNA, no lab grown meat, all American beef that's 100% natural. Also, of course, there's many other ways that you can fight back. Of course, they are destroying independence across the board. And one of those ways is to get out of the current CBDC system in the banking system. I urge people to go and check out firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/ and buy physical gold, silver, platinum, or palladium today. Hold it in your hands, put it in a vault, put it in an IRA outside of the traditional IRA system, and work with Mark Gonzalez, a good friend of ours. I'm about to do a video with him. Schedule an appointment for a free consultation with Mark Gonzalez and a complimentary investors package. Let him know when you sign up in the comments of the forum that you found him at World Alternative Media, or WAM, W-A-M. And of course, health is important. Go and check out vni.life/WAM, W-A-M, for many different kinds of vitamins and supplements. But one that I want to mention is Protovite, which is amazing. 100 plus vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients that help heal cells. It's great for cellular health. Look at this 5-minute difference among white blood cells. Look at the toxins, and this is 5 minutes later. This is something that's incredible. I urge people to go and check that out. Use code WAM15, WAM15, and you'll save 15% on your order. The link is in the description, my friends. Finishing it off, if you want to help support us, we truly appreciate it. We have gogetfunding.com, Patreon, Subscribestar. Anything helps, my friends. We are bankrupt. We need you. I have $35 in my bank account. You guys are the only thing that's keeping us up and running. So anything helps, my friends. $4.99 a month or more on Patreon or Subscribestar helps us stay alive, and we'll give you exclusive content at the same time. Same with on X at World Alt Media if you subscribe. We have a PayPal address, ancientwonderstelevision@gmail.com. We have a Bitcoin address that you can scan on the screen here or check out in the description of the video. And of course, we have a Cointree link with a bunch of different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in if you please, including privacy coins. Of course, we have a Teespring store with merchandise. As always, find us on Telegram, band.video, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media. We're on Hive, Steemit, and Vigilante.tv at Josh Sigurdson. And on the Bad Guys, TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, Twitter and Getter at World Alt Media, and all the major podcast platforms, except for Spotify, where, of course, we're banned. Hit that like button, share on social media, hit the notification bell, and hit subscribe if you have not yet already. And as always, my friends, live freely, live by example. That's what it's all about. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.